were supposed to do as a priest?
The one thing?
One thing.
The whole church was happy to see you, Abouna, coming. You will be dealing with them on the right channels, the same language, and bring them to church.
Sometimes I just don't know what to do, and people expect me to know what to do. I have some things we can do differently.
Oh, no. Abouna, no changes.
If you think what you're doing is right for the church, I think you should fight for it.
You're trying to go against hundreds of years of tradition.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Beyond the Wars. Today we're very blessed to have Andrew Ishak with us. Thank you for joining us. If you could introduce yourself.
Of course, yeah. Thank you for having me. My name is Andrew. I am a professor at Santa Clara University, which is in California in the United States. And probably the reason we're talking today is because I've also done some work as a filmmaker. And most recently, I started a film series called Abouna. It's a scripted series, and it focuses on the life of a new Coptic priest. So I'm guessing that's probably why we're talking today. So I thought I'd highlight that.
Yeah, so the first question we wanted to ask you today is, you made Abouna not just as a filmmaker from an outside perspective, but also as a member of the Coptic Church and of the faith. So what story did you want to tell through the series?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was really interested in looking at Coptic culture. That's been the thing that's always interested me. I made a documentary 17 years ago about Coptic culture as well. So, I'm not really an authority on, spiritual issues and things like that, but I am a researcher of communication and culture. And so I thought it'd be interesting to look at it from a different perspective. So we think about it from our perspective quite a bit, as I'm a member of the congregation, but I wanted to tell a story that maybe shows the intermediary, right? The priest who has this role that's really quite challenging. And we all get a little piece of the priest, but the priest has to live their life every day. And so I wanted to tell that story, which is why I interviewed 12 priests for the project and really wanted to make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah, so I think we did some research, and you did a lot of screenings and for the episodes all over America, and you had Q&A questions after. What were the most frequently asked questions about your film?
Yeah, that's a good question. So every congregation was different. Every showing was different, which was interesting. But no question that the number one asked question is, what was the intention behind the film? I know, that might be a question you might ask today, but I'll just briefly say that people really want to know about that. And the answer is that I wanted to make something realistic. I wanted to show what the Coptic culture is like, what our communities are like. And people also ask questions about, what does the church think of this? And they would ask questions about how long it took to make. And, in some places like Washington, D.C., where there's a really high number of highly educated people, I was getting very academic questions. So I felt like I was back at an academic conference. In other places where maybe people were a bit younger, so like college, when I say college, I mean, university, people who are, 17 to 22 years old, their questions would be more, about actually the themes, right? So they wanted to talk about things like, how do we look at, Western culture and Coptic culture together, and questions about language and things like that. They really kind of delved not into the film itself, but more about the themes.
So following up on that, when you explained to them your intention behind making this series, is that kind of what got them on board with it and helped people decide they want to act with you on the series?
Yeah, I think everybody has a different reason they wanted to be in it. There are some people who really like acting. And then some people who I said, hey, you're family, you're going to be in this. So sorry, a choice. No, I never forced anybody to be in it. But, I didn't want to play a priest. I did not want to be in this. I wanted to be behind the camera, and I could not find somebody to find a priest. There's somebody to play a priest. Mm-hmm. So it was very challenging to find people for certain roles. We're working on episode 2 right now, and even there's a role I had to cut out because we just could not find somebody to do it. But for most people, it's something fun. It does take a little bit of time, but I think most people were excited about the idea of making a film that was featuring Coptic people, not necessarily coming from the Coptic church. right? Something that's just about Coptic people. So I think that got people excited.
So you mentioned now you're working on the second episode to the series, and like, what's the prospect of the series? How many episodes? You know, even a season? Like, what's your aim with it?
Yeah. Well, if my wife was here, she always reminds me regularly, because she's amazing. So good at keeping me focused. And she says, just do the next one, do the next episode, and don't worry about the rest. I have 7 like planned out. At some point I had 3 or 4 written, and then given the direction of where they're going, given how some people have moved across the country, they've lived 3,000 miles away now, I have to change characters and things like that. I'm working on episodes 2 and kind of 3 right now, like in the writing process. But the idea is I want to explore a little bit of like the first couple months of this, of what it's like for the priest. But really, I want to tell other stories. So just as an example, episode 2 focuses on Tassoni. So it's not that every episode will focus on a different person, but the hope is that it's not just about the priest. I want to show what other people's stories are like as well. So that's my plan, but I can tell you that if I were to work on an episode every year, then, you know, how old would I be? Like 90 years old? I don't know. I'd be 47 when this is done. I mean, we're talking about like 2030, 2031. So I don't know where I'll be at that point. So who knows? Who knows?
So Andrew, obviously you're talking about your intentions, and I'd say you kind of generalizing, you know, the priest and what the priest goes through. But wouldn't you agree that there are, you know, certain circumstances and different, you know, circumstances that the priests are in that you maybe haven't explored? And how do you plan on exploring
Absolutely.
this?
Yeah. There's no question about that. And that's something that's important for me to be clear about. This is a scripted series about one character. And many priests, for example, many priests get an education in family counseling, in at a school of divinity. This priest didn't, right? So this is an example of a priest who was, and I mean, I'm being honest about what the character is. He's unprepared, right? He's not ready, and that is the case for some priests. And many priests told me, most priests said they felt unprepared when they started the process. But a lot of priests get an education that helps them with their, like in like ministerial studies or something like that. A lot of priests, maybe most priests in Australia, US, Canada, maybe most priests are at a church with more than one priest, which totally changes the dynamic. So if you have a senior priest, as an example, that comes with benefits and drawbacks, but mostly benefits in the sense that you're able to work together. You have an advisor. You have somebody who's been through it before. And when I talk with like Abouna Elijah in DC, you know, he's the one of 4 priests. Just very different experience. Yeah. So there's no question about it. Every experience is different, and I think that's really important to bring up.
So Andrew, when the filming of the series, or like the first episode at least, finished, what were some of the positive remarks or feedback that you got from people, both like from the church and outside?
Yeah, the most common positive remark was from priests, and it was, and I'm like honored to say that they would say this or text me about it. They'd say, "You captured my life." Like, are you sitting in the car with us right now? Like, and a lot of priest wives would tell me that as well. They felt it was very realistic. In terms of, they said especially like the demands of the job. So, and like the loving congregation and how they have that familial relationship with the congregation. So number one, that was the most positive thing. I think a lot of people were also excited at the idea of something being, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. Something that is kind of, it's not shiny. It's not like we haven't cleaned it up. It's just kind of, this is what our lives are like in a lot of ways. I mean, and you all can probably relate to some parts of it and not relate to others. That's probably the case. And everybody has maybe something they can connect to. So to me, that was the most important, or that was the most common positive piece of feedback. Do you want me to go into negative as well, or do you want me to talk about positive?
Sure.
If you'd like to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the criticisms, and I think a lot of people don't share their criticisms because I think a lot of people are very polite. But the most common criticism that was shared with me is that it felt like it was a criticism of the church, and it felt like maybe that it wasn't. It was heavier on the negatives of what the church culture is like. And I'll say two things about that. One is I agree. When you do an art project, which this is an art project, it doesn't turn out exactly like you want it to turn out. And one of the things that really frustrated me as I was working on the project is, as I got towards the end, I realized I wasn't showing as much of the beauty of the culture and the beauty of the congregation and the community as much as I wanted to. And so it's a reasonable critique. And then I think the other part to that is, I think we're really used to most things about the Coptic Church are encouragement of the Coptic Church. One way or another way to look at it, it's like, it's praise for the Coptic Church and the community. And so when we see something that is not kind of framed as praise, I think it might look negative when certainly not my intention. My intention coming into this is to show something realistic. Because I'm a researcher. I want to show what things are like, not what I wish things were like, and not what I hope things are like. Just what are they like?
So,
and again, it's a scripted series, so it's going to be one example, not every example.
Sorry, Andrew. You touched on not showing the beauty. In future episodes, do you plan on showing the beauty of the church, or is that not your aim?
Yeah, I'm trying to do that in a better way. So there's a couple of things to split out. When we talk about the church, right? There's many things you can say we mean. We mean the faith. We mean the church structure. So we mean like literally physical buildings, but we also mean things like the clergy, right? When we say the church, sometimes we're talking about the clergy. Sometimes we're talking about the church community. And sometimes we're talking about the culture. So there are a lot of different layers to this. And for me, I'm not making something about the faith because I'm not qualified to talk about the faith on this scale. That's my opinion. I didn't do research on the faith. I did research on the culture. So I want to show the beauty of the culture because we have a beautiful faith in which there are so many amazing resources to find out about that. And I would love if I could do everything. I want to make sure that I stay focused on what the project is, which is about the non-spiritual aspects of our Coptic experience, because those are not as important as the spiritual aspects, but they are important. So I'm going to do my best to show that beauty. I'm doing my best to capture those things. It's hard because conflict is often interesting. But I'm going to do my best.
It's beautiful
to do it.
So you mentioned you really wanted to focus on the cultural aspect of our church and less of the spiritual elements. And your video, it reached so much success, it has 70,000 views. And you mentioned in a previous interview I watched with Father Elijah Stephanos for the Reintroduction podcast, you mentioned that you allowed people to relate to it even if they're not a priest through touchstones of the language conflicts, the food, the relationship with their parents. So using this video as a cultural lens, did you evangelize to people and bring them to the church? Were more people interested? I know you mentioned your students went to your showing, so how did that kind of pan out?
Yeah, I would call it soft touch evangelism in a way. It's here. You can look at this is my opinion. The more we know about things, the more we generally like them. This is what happens when you're a kid and you don't like to eat certain food, and then finally you try it more and you're like, oh, actually I like this food. Or you don't know much about a book or a movie, and somebody tells you to watch it, and you're like, I don't know, and then you learn more about it, and you're like, oh, that seems really interesting. So I feel like the more we know about something, the more comfortable we become with it, and we understand the beauty of it. Actually, the best example of this is something like wine or art. When somebody goes yeah, this wine is, I'm like, sure, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it has all those characteristics you're talking about, but really it's me just not knowing anything about it, right? When it comes to art, it's the same way. Somebody might say, oh, this is beautiful because of the way. I just don't know anything about that art. But when you teach me about that art, when you teach me about that, then I know more about it, and therefore I have a better understanding of what it is, and I can love it more. So I feel like part of this is filling in the picture of what is the culture like. It's filling in, especially, this is a hope of mine, that it's people who are at the fringe of the church. So I think people who they're part of the community and go to church regularly. I don't know this helps them in any sort of way in terms of their own evangelism, or their own spiritual journey. And I don't know that it helps somebody who's like anti-church. I don't think it's going to help them. Who I think it helps are people who maybe have, went to church when they were younger, but maybe are like not as interested, or people who are joining the church because maybe they're getting married to somebody, or the friends of people who are Coptic. I think that's where there might be a lot of value in just filling in the picture of, you've talked to this priest, so you understand a little bit more about the spirituality and the faith. This project can help you understand the culture a little bit more as well.
Right. So from our previous research coming into this, we think from your previous work, you undertook a Coptic documentary following your wife's journey into the faith, and also one of your friends who was in the Indian background. So is that kind of what helped you produce this series, or gave you influence to film this in a certain way?
Yeah, I wanted to make a documentary because, again, I want realism. I want to show what's actually happening. And that documentary was, up until Abouna, was the hardest thing I've ever done in terms of a major project. As I was editing, my wife was pregnant. We had just moved to Texas, where I was in grad school. And I was spending every night editing all night. And after I finished that project, I said, I don't think I'm going to do anything about the Coptic Church anymore, because it was just too much. And I also thought I didn't want to do a documentary, because documentaries are tough. You have to film a lot, go through a ton of footage. So, I got a spark from my friend George in 2018 to do something again about the Coptic Church. And I knew at that point I wanted to do what I did in 2008. I wanted to show what the culture was like, but I wanted to do a scripted series. So certainly what I worked on in 2008, there's definite connections to what you'll see in episodes 2 and episode 3. There are, quite literally lines from the documentary that people had said in 2008 that you're going to see in future episodes, because it's just too good to not include. It's just exactly what, I think would work to show as this is what Coptic culture is like. So it definitely helps in that way.
Andrew, we touched on how your project touched others and helped them get closer to God. But how would you say that the project helped you explore your faith and get closer to God?
Oh, such a good question. This is something I think about all the time, and it makes me emotional a lot of times when I think about it, because if I show you, I don't mean this as this is not a point of pride. This is just something that I appreciate. When I look now through my phone and I look through my contacts, the F section is just father this, father this, father this. It's 100 priests in there now, because I was able to connect with so many amazing clergy members who, I'll be totally honest with you, because I think it's important for me to be honest. I struggle in my faith sometimes. Faith is not easy. And so even working on this project, I felt almost like an imposter. It's I don't have the faith that I want, yet I'm working on a project about a church community, and I'm trying my best. And being able to connect with people who are in an important spiritual role and are real people. These are people who have experienced a lot of the same things I've experienced in my life. And being able to talk with them and simply just sitting down with them and hearing their thoughts about different things. And sometimes it would come out through them saying something that I was I've experienced that too. And the fact that you've experienced that as a priest, it just helped me feel comforted. And sometimes I'm asking for advice, and they gave me good spiritual advice. And those connections over the last, since it's October 2023 is when I first put something out where I got a lot of priests connecting with me. So almost, a year and a half or so, they have helped me so much in my faith. And so, yes, going to different churches has been helpful to see the beauty in all the churches. Connecting with people in different communities has been helpful for sure, but it's connecting with the clergy members that have, it's to me, it's like, it's giving me a different foundation of my faith, if that makes sense, that I can draw on. And I'll if they don't mind me mentioning them, Father Moses Ayad, who is in Berkeley, maybe, is that right? Is that
I don't think
south of Sydney?
He's
Something like that?
he's with us. Don't worry.
Oh, he's with you. He's with you.
No, not with us. Not with us personally, but he's in Sydney. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And then Abouna Michael Salib, who's in Melbourne, who I actually met with him last month when I went to Australia. I'm just pointing out to Australian priests. Just people like them. I mean, just to sit down and chat with them, whether on the phone and hear about their lives and hear about their different perspectives has completely changed my the foundation of my faith.
It's beautiful.
So you mentioned you, like, during this process, before even like starting to film, you interviewed 12 priests, and I wanted to ask, like, in conversation with them, what are some things that they mentioned or said to you that really challenged like any preconceived notions you had going into it?
Yeah. Well, kind of like I'm saying about the different congregations, different priests, I've been saying this phrase a lot. The Coptic Church is not a monolith. So a monolith is like something where everything's the same. It's this big thing where everything's the same, right? You go into any, Walmart. Sorry, that's a bad example. Like a really large store. Do you guys? What do you guys have in Australia? What are your big stores?
Coles, Woolies.
That's a grocery.
Whatever it is, it's like the same everywhere.
Yeah, same,
yeah. Stuff like that. It's not like that, right? Every church is different. Every priest is different. Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the question.
Like, what are some things they said that shocked you?
Yeah. So they're all different. They're all different, and some of them, I thought, well, priests are very busy. There's a lot going on in their lives, but they also have this love for the congregation, and they're also touched by the grace of God. And that's true. But also, some priests were saying things like, I would never let any congregation for my home addresses. They could never, things I wouldn't expect them to say, because what they're saying is, I want my privacy, whereas other priests don't care. And then other priests were saying, no, it doesn't bother me when somebody calls me at 3 a.m. That's what I'm here for. That's my job. Other priests who would say, yeah, it's a real challenge with my family. My wife and I, we struggle with our scheduling all the time. It's a constant source of conflict. And then other priests would say, no, we've got it figured out. I treat it like a job. She treats her job like her job. And I would talk to their wives and say, yeah, we have no issues. It's a job. It's his job. He does his job, and I do my job. So what surprised me was that while there are similarities between each priest, like we talked about at the top, every priest is in a different situation, and they're all individuals, and they're all very interesting in their own way. And that's what surprised me the most.
And also, like, in preparation for your second episode, you said it's focusing more on like the Tonis experience. Did you then like have to interview some Tonis beforehand?
Yes, I did. I have talked with some Tonis. It's some informal conversations, some longer interviews on the phone, and same thing. I mean, look, if when Tonis open up and they're honest with you about things, we have this idea of what Tonis are like, and it definitely will break your preconceived notions. They would like me saying this. Tonis and priests are people just like us. They really are. We think they wear a black robe and therefore they're all kind of like in this structure. They're not. They're all unique individuals who deal with things that we deal with, and I'm fascinated by that.
So something fascinating that I heard was that 2 days before you were planning to release the episode for everyone to see, you watched it with your family and you didn't like the production. So yeah, what made you end up like persisting in uploading it and just going through with it?
My wife. So I'll mention two things here. One is that we watched it right here. Okay, we watched it on the screen that's in front of me. My kids and wife are sitting in these chairs and I'm sitting right here. And as I'm watching it, the thing that was really getting to me was that it was are you familiar with the story of Frankenstein's monster?
Yeah.
Yeah, just pieces put together. I felt like it wasn't cohesive, and I didn't like the story. And the ending, it wasn't even there. So I still don't, I mean, I'll just be honest, I still don't love the ending of this one. But it was like the best I could do at the time. But when I watched it, I thought, I'm going to show this to people in 2 days and I'm not proud of it. And I don't like showing work that I'm not proud of. So I actually felt like physically sick and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And my wife, this is where, like, you know, they say art imitates life, but then life imitates art. So I'm making a project about somebody who's at church all the time. And this is me, I live 2 miles from church, just at church all the time, filming. And then they have to get great counsel from their wife who helps them keep going. That's what the first episode's about. And that's what my life was like. Because my wife sat me down and said, okay, let's see what we can do. What do you not like? Let's go through it. Let's go scene by scene. What do you not like? Cut it out. Make changes. So she helped calm me down and helped me get through it. And there are scenes where I cut out 75% of the scene. I mean, it was probably an hour, 20 minutes when I first, an hour 15 when I first watched it all together before we did that little preview in June 2023. So sometimes you need people like that. Sometimes you need family members and friends who are there for you, who you can rely on. And it was a really big difference maker for me.
Andrew, you mentioned that the next episode you're working on is obviously centered around Tonis. Do you reckon we could get more of a preview into the next few episodes and what they're about?
Yeah, I could tell you. I mean, I'll tell you where I'm trying to go with it, and so we can see. So, episode 2 is, I mean, it focuses on Tonis. It focuses on her relationship with her, with Abouna, and there's a couple flashback scenes, like when they first, not when they first met, but when they first started to like talk to each other, and I'm trying to show a little bit of that relationship and how. Also trying to focus on, this is like a personal thing for me. I'm trying to focus more on the stories of women in our church as well, which I think is really important. Not to say that the church doesn't do that, but I want to do that. I think it's important. At episode 3, I've kind of sketched it out. I've written parts of it, but I haven't written the whole thing. But it's about, I could pull up my notes here, but it's about the Beeman's relationship with his dad when he's young. So it focuses more on that and the challenges that of what it's like to raise a child in the church, and also the challenges of living kind of like a dual identity. So for some people, their identities are really aligned. They're the same person at church that they are elsewhere, but that's not the case for everybody. And certainly for me growing up, it didn't feel like that. So trying to highlight a little bit of that. There's, I won't try to I won't give away some things, but the priest is going to be faced with a decision that he has to make that leads to like him thinking about what is his role with the congregation. And there is an episode, there's a priest retreat, an informal retreat that I'm excited about, because I'm most excited about it because my close friends are going to play the other priests. And so we're excited. We used to make films together when we were kids. We made a movie about an Egyptian boy band in 2002. It was like a mockumentary. So we're excited to film together again because they haven't really been in this one yet. So that's a little bit of a preview.
I wanted to ask one small question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Why the name Beeman?
Good question. Okay, I was trying to choose a name of a priest that no priest had. So I didn't want to choose, like, what are your priest names?
We have all the classic names.
Abouna George, Abouna Joseph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to choose a name where somebody would say, "Oh, you're talking about this priest." I didn't want to do that. And then reading about Abba Beeman, it's like the kind of character that I wanted to include. And there's a little part in the episode where the dad is saying, like, here's why we named you this, because he was a very loving monk. There's a story of him, somebody fell asleep, another monk fell asleep during praises, and the monk fell asleep, and he put Abba Beeman put the monk's head in his lap and was like helping him sleep. And somebody else said, why he's sleeping during prayers? He's like, let him be comfortable here in the church. Let him be here in the church with God. And that's the kind of attitude that I want the priest to possess. To say that, he's not a rigid priest. He's a priest who cares about the congregation. You can see his dad is kind of his dad's kind of like an example for him. Somebody who kind of goes like, yeah, I want to like come to church, come be with Christ.
So did you just have like any favorite scene while filming or from what was produced in the end?
Yeah, I really like the scene when Beeman is younger, so it's like 1995, and he's sitting with his uncle and aunt and they're talking about what makes their experience in Egypt different than the United States. Because I've always been fascinated by this. I've always thought about what would my life be like if my parents never left Egypt? What would my life be like if my parents went to a different country? My dad is very close to being in the Netherlands. He was in Canada, and then he got 2 job offers, one in Northern California, one in Southern California. And just kind of because somebody told him, go to Hewlett Packard, it's a better company. He went to Northern California as opposed to going to Southern California. So my life could be different in different ways. I could be in Egypt, I could be in the Netherlands, I could be in Southern California. So I like the idea of them having this conversation about, here's what things were like where we were, and here's what we want things to be like where we are, but maybe they're actually not that different. We're still struggling with the same things. I mean, even in Egypt, a priest reached out to me and said they have people who go to university in the UK and come back to Egypt and ask for English in the liturgy in Egypt, which is so surprising to me. Have you all heard that before? Did you know that?
Never.
So they're dealing with language issues too, and they're dealing with issues of identity as well. And my parents had this experience back in Egypt, in 1960s and 70s, and then they come here and things are different in the United States, and then things have changed over the last 40 years, but things have changed in Egypt too. So I like the idea of them exploring why they immigrated and what it means to them. And I think at the center of all of our stories, I mean, I'm sure when you all talk with your friends, like that's an important part of your story that either, I'm assuming your parents immigrated or maybe you all did, I don't know. But it's an important part of our story and I like them talking about that.
I had a small question. What was the initial reaction of, the first priest that you brought up the idea to, What was the initial reaction?
So the first person I brought it up with is a childhood friend. His name's Anthony Abosef. He's not a priest, but he's as knowledgeable as a priest. He was really supportive. He's actually one of the first people. He used to come to my house. He's my brother's age, and he had a video camera, and we'd make videos when we were kids. So he's one of the 2 people who inspired me, along with my uncle, to make short films. And he's a really good touchstone. When I ran up by him, he was like, "Yeah, that'd be really interesting." And I'm like, "Oh, okay," because he's plugged into the church and also has interesting ideas. And then I ran up by another priest in New York, Abouna Gregory Seraphim, and he was fully supportive. I said, "Can I interview you?" He's like, "Yeah, anytime you want." He's a friend of my brother's from when my brother was in college, in university. And so there's a lot of support. I got a lot of support from priests on this. There have been challenges. There have been challenges with certain dioceses in terms of showing this at churches. I could get into all that, but I don't have to rehash those things if you don't want me to. But priests in general have been very, very supportive.
That's beautiful. So I think, segueing from the film that you created, we wanted to kind of talk about, as you just briefly mentioned, the issues that, are portrayed in the film that have been enduring since, all of our parents' time in Egypt and until now with all of us. And as well, your experience as an American Copt.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
No, you first.
Well, can I tell you something? I'm really fascinated that I was able to connect with people outside of the United States, to connect with people who lived in Australia and Canada and the UK and other places. Do y'all find that interesting? Do you have friends outside of Australia who they have the same experience as you do? even though they're
I
living
think
in a
the
different
only
country?
time I experienced this was when Abouna Anthony Masih came to Australia, and he's like a big
Yeah.
deal here. And
Yeah.
we had the opportunity, like we were just talking with his kids, they're like all the same age. And, you know, we were so fascinated with the fact that like they're living a similar life, but like
Yeah.
across the world. And like,
Yeah.
we're so privileged here. Like we have the Coptic School. I don't think you guys have one in America.
We don't. No,
You
we
guys-
don't.
you
I
need to
mean,
get
maybe
one.
just some small primary schools. Yeah.
No, it's so good. Like, yeah, so we were, because obviously we're surrounded with all of our friends 24/7 who we see at church. We see like 6-7 days a week. We all share the
Yeah.
same beliefs, you know, like this is what we do in our free time, like talk about the
Yeah.
church and everything. So for
Yeah.
them to like be in the same situation as us, but not have that outlet, like,
Yeah.
like being different, like, and that's why we wanted to call this series like being in the world, but not of the world, because that's what people
Yeah.
have to experience outside through like the migrant experience.
Yeah. 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 I mean, yeah. So thinking about like, for me growing up, you know, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and that was in the 19th century or the 20th century, if you guys have heard of that. Back then. You know, I always felt like being Coptic was a really big part of my identity, and also being American too. So, you know, when I was with my friends who were, you know, at school, the only other Coptic person was my cousin Teresa. We went to school together for 12 years, and we just, you know, I was Coptic at school. Like that was like my identity. And then when you go to church, you feel American. I don't know if I really answered your question. I forgot what the question was.
No,
but
that's exactly,
yeah. Sorry, ask me another question, and I'll do my best to remember it this time.
Look, to add to what Alethea was saying, I think we're very, very blessed here to have the Coptic school, and we're kind of, you know, we use this term how we're sheltered by the Coptic school, because as Alethea was saying, we see our friends 6-7 times a week. All right, we see them during school and then on the weekend at church. So I think a question to you would be, how different is that in America, because you guys don't have the Coptic school? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I think that's interesting. In the summer, growing up, so the first church I went to was 40 minutes away from me. Then when I was 13, we built a church here, and I live near a city called San Jose. And we built a church here, so it's about 15 minutes away from my house. And so in the summers, high school and college, we would see each other all the time. We would go to church for activities. I would spend a week at my friend's house, who lived an hour away. One of my best friends. I just go to his house for a week, and other people would come, and then I go to somebody else's house for a week. Then they'd come to my house for a week. So we had those connections. We don't have it like you all do, where it's 6 or 7 times a week at, you know, school, church. We don't have something like that. But I can tell you that somebody like me and somebody like my friends, we've always felt really connected to our community, even when we live far away. Like even, you know, 40 minutes or an hour is far away. I would say that my best friends in the church, one of them lives close by, the rest of them still live an hour away. But we still feel close. You know, it's different kind of closeness. But I wonder what your experience is like, because is your church, is your college, is it 100% people who are Coptic, or do you have people who are outside the faith?
No, we definitely have people who are outside the Coptic culture, but we all share the same like fundamental religious, like Christian beliefs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I went to a Catholic school until 6th grade. And even, I mean, there was people who were Muslim there. There were people who were atheist, which is really interesting to go to a Catholic school with people. You know, we're sitting there at Friday Mass, and there's people who are Muslim in Friday Mass. So yeah, I don't know. I've never experienced what you experienced. I think it's really interesting. I think it's like, I wish, you know, my kids are 16 and 12. I wish they had a bigger Coptic community, kind of like I had. Our kids, they don't have a lot of kids who are their age in our church, which is, it's so great. One of the best things in my life was being around friends my age growing up, Coptic friends.
So to bounce sort of off that, like Jacob and Alethea said, because we're in this like sheltered community, we kind of see ourselves as like separate to the outside world. But my question was, because of that for us, where we sort of take the phrase "not of the world" a bit too literally, and we just separate ourselves. How is it for you, where you're sort of more both in the Coptic world and sort of Americanized, sort of?
Yeah.
How does that
Yeah.
help you in your evangelistic approach, where you made like an episode, like you said, and hopefully a series?
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think, at some point we have to be in the world. We have to be, if we're only interacting with people who are like us, that there's value to that, because everybody in the Coptic church is different. And there's people in the church who do need that support from their members of their church. I think it's so good for us to get out and be with other people. I think it teaches us a lot about ourselves even. So when I made a documentary in 2008, students who connected with me who said, "Oh, my family's Filipino. They have the exact same experience, like same family experience in our church." And you start to realize that other people are actually quite similar to us in lots of ways. Not necessarily that they have the same faith, but that there are a lot of similarities in the way that they live. And then sometimes there are differences as well. And that can inform what you might think. So for me, I think it's so good for us to interact with as many people as possible. I teach qualitative research methods right now. So I'm always thinking about culture and how it's good for us to learn about different cultures. I always ask people questions. I want to know as much as possible. I had a meeting with a former student this morning who works at a high-end boutique for women's clothing. I had so many questions because I don't know anybody who works in that kind of field. I think it's just good for us to always learn as much as we can about other people. This is actually what I like Copts to do in general. I want us to listen. I want us to ask questions of others and learn about them. I think sometimes we're very quick, like we want to tell people about our faith, which is good, but also we have to sit and listen to other people, because the more we understand about them, the better we can assist them in their own lives with their own, if we want to help bring them to Christ, we have to know more about them. So I think it's important for us to listen and be with other people as well.
Yeah.
I really like that, because like you're taking the not of the world not as like a method of like being able to retreat, but like to evolve and to adapt. And like something I heard recently from like a priest in America, he was saying that people coin the term like, "Oh, my kid's American now," as like it's a bad thing. But in reality, like it's the religion that sticks with us and the culture as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a term, and I'm forgetting what it is, but there's a term in Arabic about being American that's considered negative. I'm forgetting the exact term, but I think that we look at like American as bad, or I don't know. Do you all have the same kind of experience where you say, "Oh, that's Australianized," or like what would you say?
100%. That's Aussie, yeah.
Yeah.
Aussie, okay. Yeah, I guess you guys shorten everything, right? You can't say the word. Yeah, when we were in Australia, it's just everything is just say the first half of it and then add an I or an O to the end of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think we look at Americanized as bad. And I will say a comment I got a lot was people saying, "Oh, you saying the American way is better?" I'm like, no, I'm not. First of all, I'm not saying anything. I'm just telling you these are characters, but Americanization is not a good thing. It's just something. And so we have to take, Abouna Michael Soriel, who lives in near New York City, said one thing to me that always stuck with me. It's like, take the good from different places, right? Americans are on time for things. That's probably good. We should probably take that. Tends to be clearer communication. Tends to be a little bit more like expressing emotions in like in a more measured way. Maybe that's a good thing for like board meetings and things like that. So, I think Americanization is not a bad thing, but people will look at it as bad because it seems like anti-church. It seems like against certain teachings, and I don't know that I would look at it that way. I would say there are just as many Egyptian things that are against the teachings of Jesus Christ. So I don't know that like one culture has a monopoly on what Christ taught. I think every worldly culture is going to have its positives and negatives.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. I think we've run out of questions, but you've been incredible, and we're very, very excited for the next episode to drop. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. And I need to come to Sydney because I came to Australia last month.
Yes, you have to visit our school.
First thing, you got to visit our school.
I know, I will. Because I went because can I just tell you quickly why I was there, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
My in-laws, who are now retired, they are spending time in Australia, and we met them outside of Adelaide, in the Tanunda Valley. Does that? No, the Barossa Valley. Barossa Valley. Do you know what that is?
Yeah.
We would all
Yeah. Never been there. Okay. All right. And then we could, because it was on my kids', 1 week spring break or their holiday, we could really only go to one other place. And so we chose Melbourne. I'll tell you why. Not to say it's better than Sydney, although I have to say I fell in love with Melbourne. It's absolutely amazing. My son wanted to go because he's a huge Formula One fan, and there's a track there. So we actually biked the track. It was just beautiful. It was so nice. My daughter wanted to go because we go to concerts together a lot, and there's a lot of great music from Australia. I can share my playlist with you if you want, but a lot of great music out of Melbourne. Really, like a lot of great music. So anyway, she wanted to go there because she had felt like a connection to it. And then for me, my family makes fun of me for this. I really like public transit. I like trams and trains. And Melbourne's like amazing for that. Is Sydney the same or a little bit different?
Not as good, I don't think, but we do have good public transport.
We have more modern transport. Yeah.
More modern. Okay. Well, next time I'll come to Sydney and we can ride some trams together.
Definitely. We have 8 priests at our church, so you'll have fun.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. I would love to. I've heard amazing things about the youth in Sydney. Just like the quantity and the quality. And I'd love to come see you all.
Yeah,
we'd love to have you. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pray for us.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.